Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Okeechobee Utility Authority regular meeting of November 15th, 2022. It is 8:30 a.m. And I get everybody to please stand and join me to the pledge. For the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America. Move on to the determination of voting members. Ms. Anderson?
Present.
Mr. Clay? Here. John Creasman's here. Mr. Fadley? Mr. Moldenhauer? Mr. Nelson?
Present.
Ms. Trent?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Present.
We do have a quorum. We do have representatives from all three entities. Moving on. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 2. We have a new agenda at our place settings, and you will see that we have, or the staff has added 2A, the November 14th, 2022 workshop. Need a motion to enter that into our agenda.
Motion to enter.
Motion by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Ms. Anderson, second. Further discussion? Being none, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Moving right along to 2A.
Mr. Chairman, this is just provided as a recap of our workshop yesterday.
This is what happened yesterday. I took it home and opened it up. It was
Doesn't like you. Go ahead, John, sorry.
This is just a recap of the potential discussion points for the workshop from yesterday. You will see each of the workshop items listed in your agenda. So as we go through those, if anybody wants to review back to that document, they're so inclined.
Everybody good with that? Okay, moving down our list, we're going to move to agenda item number 3, the meeting minutes of October 20th, 2022. Entertain a motion.
there.
Yeah,
There is one correction.
on number 21.
Go ahead.
Has me down as making the motion and seconding it.
Kind of just take all the credit. don't you?
I don't think we can do that.
Okay, we'll need to correct that. Any other corrections or additions?
Not that I can find.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept with the correction.
So I said,
Motion by Mr. Clay, second by Mr. Nelson. Any further? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Do we have this in here? Agenda item number 4 is employee recognition. Mr. Jackson?
Not there.
Not here. All right, we are recognizing this month Paul Jackson for 5 years of service as an employee of the Okeechobee Utility Authority. Michelle, would you please make sure he gets his certificate and his check? Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 5, the consent agenda. Any board member wish to have any agenda items pulled?
motion we accept the consent agenda is written.
Motion by Mr. Clay to accept, second Ms. Trent. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Let's go down into my item number 11, financial report. Thurston, Mr. Hamilton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, this month is the first month of the financial year. There is not much to say. It looks okay. I would not say good, but looks okay. On the revenue side, we are 2% above the projected revenue at this point. So that's a positive variance, right? So then on the expense side, we are actually below in expense as it is right now. We were budgeted to spend $581,000 at $520,000. So that's positive variance as well at this time. So there is not much more more than to say at this time, but if anyone has any question, having looked through the package or would like me to clarify any other thing else, I'll gladly do. But generally speaking, first month, it's favorable variance so far. This time.
Good deal.
Motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Clay. Discussion. Everybody's happy. First month, we're all happy.
Okay.
Thank you, Larson. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 12, the annual mowing contract. John?
We have a annual contract. We have broken all of our sites into two categories. Large areas, that would be treatment plants, well field. Those would be the bigger sites. A bunch of little sites, pump stations, buildings around buildings, that type of deal. We go out for an annual contract. Typically, I believe it's a 2-year contract with extensions. We put it out to bid. We direct solicited some local companies as well as advertised in the paper. And you'll see in your board package the attachment that gives you the names of the companies that did respond and submit bids. And then you'll also see the recommendation for award to JMC Landscaping. So if you have any particular questions, I'll try to answer them. Jamie Moss is well-versed on this bid, and we can try and get you an answer. The annual contract actually goes down a little bit, so that's a good thing.
As long as I'm not cutting the grass, I'm good.
Surprised it went down considering
Yeah.
what we're facing cost-wise and fuel-wise and.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion that we accept JMC Landscaping bid of $73,260 a year for 37 mowings. And that's a 2-year contract.
Motion by Mr. Clay. Second, Trent. Any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 13 is the OUA project financing.
Okay, first of the elements that we went through in the workshop yesterday, I'll kind of breeze through this. There are the projects that we are either under construction, designed, or under consideration for design. Southwest Service Area still revolves around the 3 major projects. Project 1 consisting of the force main connecting the new pump station to W15, the actual pump station, master station. Both of those are under construction and proceeding. The last element was the interconnect between the existing force main going up to station SE2 to the new master pump station, which will take a load off of SE2, and it will also facilitate the use of that master pump station until we get customers connected through Project 2 or Okatani. Project 2, as I mentioned, is the actual collection system for the Southwest Service Area, initially looking at about 500 connections. It is going to be a vacuum collection system, 2 vacuum pump stations. They will all pump to this new master pump station. Project 3 goes from the master pump station down to the Kissimmee River, primarily serving State Road 78 West corridor from Farrow Boulevard, well, but east of Farrow Boulevard, all the way to the river. Project 2, the next project is Pine Ridge, connecting about 80 new water customers, 100 new wastewater customers. It is also under construction at this time. The water main is in, and they're hauling vacuum mains this week. The AMI project, the Advanced Metering Infrastructure Project, you've seen several presentations on this. This is the benefit to our customers, where they can look up water usage or get alerts of high usage. They have a customer portal where they can look through. From our benefit, we get connection, reading the meters so we know what the connections are, leak detection, if a system's supposed to be off and locked, if there's illegal use, we get that. There's lots of things that we can do with the automatic metering system. What I will tell you that's different with this than other projects, we're getting no new customers, but we will get a reduction in certain annual costs that we see with this project, but there is no new revenue sources. Southwest Fifth Avenue is an area in the city that is seeking relief from localized flooding impacting their drain fields. This project is funded by the OUA, but there is no identified source for construction money on this project at this time. We do have it broken into two different phases. The initial phase is Southwest Fifth Avenue and 7th Avenue. The later phase would be from Southwest 3rd Avenue eastward to Parrott Avenue. So it's primarily some residential and light business commercial areas. And then lastly, Treasure Island. We know about that project, about 2,000 connections. We will be bringing to the board at the December meeting the engineering proposal to get this work started and kicked off so we can get into design and ultimately into construction. So that will be brought to the board at the December meeting. Two big differences in this proposal is to know that there are some projects that are under construction. We need to focus on those because we do have a contract with a construction company as opposed to under consideration, where if financial pressures dictate that we don't do it, we're not under contract, we can easily delay or put off the project. But those under construction that I mentioned, the two in Project 1, both the force main and the pump station, as well as Pine Ridge Park, are under construction right now. Project 2, I will tell you, we got the notice last week from the USDA saying that we can put it out for construction. So that would be advertised here shortly over the next few months. So we'll continue on with that work. Again, I won't go through all the under construction versus under consideration. You've had time to review that. If you have any questions over the information provided, I will be gladly to answer it, but I would like to get on with the table. I hope it's on your, is it in your package, this table? It's not in mine.
No, but we have it up here.
Okay, well, we can make you a copy if you'd like to see it, or if you can read this, we'll go over it. You saw it yesterday in the workshop.
It's in the workshop package.
So what we have here laid out is this column here is either actual bid pricing or engineer's best guess estimate on where the construction money would come in. All of these columns are trying to identify sources of funds to meet those construction needs. And this last column here is the no-no column. That's the unmet need financially for the project. So this lays it all out from anticipated or actual construction money through the resources to fund it, and then the unmet needs. So you'll see here on Project 2, it's almost $4 million under the Southwest Service Area that has an unmet, anticipated, expected deficit. Now, once we go out to bid and receive bid, we'll know whether that $4 million is accurate or where does it go. This is being funded through USDA as well as some DP grant appropriation. USDA is aware of this overage. They said it could easily be handled as an addition to the, I don't know about easily, it can be handled by an additional overage under that loan process, which they would deal with once they know what the number is. Yet until we know that. The Pine Park wastewater, there is a shortage there. That was identified when the bids came in high, and the OUA elected to move forward with the contract. So we know we have an overage, unexpected revenue needed for this, but there is a plan, and we'll talk about it here shortly as to how we would meet that. Miscellaneous projects, these are the ones that be under consideration. The AMI, Southwest Fifth Avenue, and Treasure Island. Treasure Island has a lot of funding. They're still short a little bit of money. It's years out. and we do have some time to address the shortage of, expected right now at $5 million. So the bottom part of this table is what's kind of interesting. In this area, you will see these are all projects that we submitted requests through the DEP grant portal. We hope to hear something this month as to if any of these projects are funded and to what level. And as you can see, some of these projects, the request, will go a long way towards meeting the needs of this unmet financial need in this other column. There's there's the 6 of them there, and again, we don't know anything about whether they were accepted or funded to a level. The AMI SRF, we do have a loan for the first part of the AMI project. It totals around $1.8 million. And what you'll see here is if this goes through, this number right here, $145,000, is the expected annual debt service payment that we would receive should we take out that loan. USDA, again, if we have the USDA loan in hand, well, it's the progress is ongoing, but that annual debt service is right here at $255,000 for that particular. If we need the $4 million, of course, this number will go up. If we get the DEP grant portal, well, it kind of drops off. How do we fund the other projects? Here, we went through the process of looking at various lending agencies to meet that need. So if we do the Southwest, looks like it'll add $135,000 to the USDA loan. Pine Ridge Park, if we don't get the portal money, we got to do SRF. The annual debt service is around $115,000. The bids for the AMI project came in higher than what was funded originally. If we got a second SRF loan on that, the upset limit, the highest limit would be around $115,000, could go down from there. And then Southwest Fifth Avenue, a $2.5 million construction guess, $150,000. So that's kind of where we were at with this. Yesterday, we went into some discussions about other funding scenarios. Let me see if that's here. So what we have here is we have 2 different other sources, potential sources to meet some of the annual debt service. In the budgetary process, every year we do transfer into 2 different funds, both the CIP and the rate stabilization funds. We set aside money in the budget to go into those funds for future needs. So you can see that over the last few years, the total amount of money that's gone into those discretionary funds as a transfer in the beginning of the year, the average over these past few years is $329,000. The other source of income, we budget things during the year that are required, such as our senior lien debt service requires a 20% overage for the annual service. So we have to fund it every year at 120%. On the junior lien, it's funded at 115%. When we make those annual debt service payments, those excesses, the 20% and 15%, are left in the budget and carry over every year. There are other expenses that we run into. Let's say we might pledge so many thousands of dollars for pump repairs. It's $20,000. If we only end up spending $15,000 for pump repairs, that money carries over. And where it shows up is when we do the audit by the outside auditing firm. At the end, they tell us what that, if you will, unaccounted for surplus is from what we had budgeted, our revenue budgeted versus actual revenue and actual expenses. We run into additional monies, which we bring back to the board, and then they allocate into a fund. Usually it could be the operating fund, could be the CIP, could be rate stabilization. But over the last few years, we do not know the year that we don't, or that we're in, but for the previous 4 years, it averaged around $422,000. So what I'm telling you is, out of the budgetary process, there's a little over $600,000 that is always churning through the budget. It shows up at the end or it's in the beginning, but it's put right back into the budget in the next year. So it's available funds for the next year to be allocated one way or another. Where does that come in? Well, when you talk about all these annual debt service payments that we're talking about picking up, some of those could easily be allocated towards this money. What I'm saying is some of those projects, depending on which ones we choose, may not require any outside additional revenues, like a rate increase. We could actually budget some of this money and make our whole budget forecasting much tighter out of, what is it, $10 million? Anyway, $11 million. We'll just get closer in this plus that shows out here that we could allocate some of that towards these annual debt service payments. So other than that, I don't, since we didn't get the other part in here, I can go over it, or we can talk about it brief as far as the annual forecasting, but basically what we wanted to show is here is some expected debt coming up in the future, and this is debt service. Thing that did come out of the workshop that we need to prepare, and once we get it prepared, we'll email out to you, is a chart relating by project where if we do them and we assume this debt along with our existing debt, how is that going to lay on a per year base versus if we look at some of this revenue coming in either from this or from new connections, how that revenue could play out against that debt to see what the delta is. Is it still plus or negative? And that's a chart that we got out of our board discussion yesterday that the board would like to see, and something that Lars and I will work on and produce.
I think that'll give us a lot, it's just a format at what it, again, these projects is being 2 and 3 years off with our debt maturity being 29 and 30. I think that's going to give us a lot clearer picture of where we're sitting. And with the additional 500 here and 200 here and all that stuff going forward, I think, like you said, once we stick the shovel in the ground, we don't pay for the project until it's done. So, you're 2 years out probably on the southwest section, like you said.
Yes, sir.
4 years out on Treasure Island, 3 years out on Treasure Island. So,
Yeah, 3 is probably a better number.
so, you're looking at 26, 27, and then in 29, we got one paying out, and in 30, we got one paying out. And that's the reason I'm pushing so hard to see that with the additional customers and all to help us make a better decision.
And as a note, just to make sure we're aware of this chart, we can go ahead and produce it, but it's subject to change because right now we're assuming that the DEP portals, we're getting nothing. And we have to look at that as being loans if we move forward. If the DEP portal comes through and there is some money made, it's going to lower those expectations, what our financial debt is going to be.
Right, and you've got we're gonna know something on the portal this month, so, we can get pretty close pretty quick.
And we're going to assume a 100% hookup with your,
Yeah.
correct?
Correct.
That's just directed at 2 people in the room.
Any feedback from Mr. Burrows?
Well, for the record, there is corrections happening. There is work on that mandatory connection, so it's very promising it will happen. So, unless there's something else from the board package, that's my Reader's Digest condensed version of what we talked about yesterday.
Thank you, John. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Hayford? Anybody that missed yesterday for business purposes? Do you have anything, Steve? Excellent. He was very thorough, wasn't he?
It was a very good workshop yesterday, I'll say that much.
All right. Let's see. We're going to move on down to agenda item 14, the AMI.
Again, another workshop item. This advanced metering infrastructure project came in, as we noted, it came in much higher
3.6
than expected.
1.8.
We are, as staff, continuing to negotiate and work with them as to how they got to that number, and if those are valid numbers, there's things that we can look at doing that would lower the impact to the budget, some of which might be OUA, just advanced purchasing the material, supplementing or doing away with contractor markup, overhead profit on that pass-through. But there's things that we look at in interim. No firm contractual issues. It's just really to see what we can do with that $3.6 million number and driving it down closer to
Because annual debt service on it was 250, isn't that what?
25, 250 something?
Yeah, 15 and 240 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And,
it was on that last slide you had up there.
and if we get any money through the portal,
Right. Yeah, so,
we'll be able to make a decision.
yeah, for those who weren't here yesterday, we decided to wait to see we suggest that we wait until we see what the portal does. Is what we suggest.
Well, and it would give us, that suggestion from that end, it's a direction on this end that was received, but at any rate, we would try to negotiate this scope of work and fee schedule down, and during that interim, waiting on the DEP portal to see what monies are made available before moving forward. But it is a lot of money. And as I stated before, it brings in no new revenue-generating customers to the project, like our other project. However, there are some savings that are on an annual basis that we would not experience if we move forward with this project, let alone the things that are intangible. We can't put a price on, whether that's a customer call or the customer here in front of you saying, 70,000 gallons went through my meter, I was out of town, can you give me some credit? And, those kind of things that as board members you've experienced rarely, but you have experienced that in the past. So the AMI project, it's not one of those that we can easily point to and say we're getting 40 new water customers or 140 or whatever. No, there are no new revenue-paying sources from that aspect. But there are savings under our annual expenses, like meter purchases, possibly labor, guaranteed labor savings. So there are some things annually that we would see through the project. But right now, again, it's on hold till the December meeting, and then we'll go from there.
Well, John, I know we decided to push this back, but I'd do another spreadsheet of what your savings are going to be that you know. We start weighing that against that $250,000 a year.
Okay? We'll have that for you by December meeting.
John, question for you. We've already received some grant money from South Florida Water Management, FDEP. What happens to those funds if we decide not to move forward with the project?
Good question. So what happens is they gave us original contract time that we had to use. That time is closing in on the end. They did say that they could do an extension if we needed to. Else, otherwise, if at the December meeting we elected not to go forward with this project, like the SRF, we would probably just thank you, but no thank you letter at this time.
And how much funding was that?
100,000 from the Water Management District, and then it was 1.8 million, something like that, which was consisting of both a loan and they call it loan forgiveness grant.
Which is the interest?
Yes. Well, it's 400, almost 500. It's 457,000.
457, 796.
So it's a lot of money. But if we're not doing the project, we would just send them letters, thank you, but no thank you.
Take
That
the
answers
notch
your
out of
question.
the debt service, wouldn't
And
Yes.
when do we have to know?
I've already got a letter, email from the Water Management District asking me what the board decide. So I will tell them that it would be put off to the December meeting, yes or no, go forward or not. They've been very nice. I mean, I told them it's been a very lengthy project to get to this point, and we don't have an answer yet.
you? John, any further questions on AMI for John?
One other question, as far as the increase in cost, whenever you communicate with them, is there any chance that we would be able to get additional funding because of the increase in cost?
So here, if you remember that discussion about SRF, we could always go back to SRF and get additional funding, but if we have a loan active, the only thing you will get is loan. So the idea was if you could go ahead and spend the money now that we have, we could file a second loan request with SRF, and it would be under the idea that it could be both a loan and loan forgiveness because we don't have an active loan. So again, it's really the process. The answer to your question is guaranteed they give us an additional loan, but what we'd really like to do is use that money and get both a loan, or at least consideration for a loan and loan forgiveness. This, remember what I said yesterday, this second AMI SRF was based solely on a loan only. If it's worst case scenario, we got a loan and loan forgiveness, then that annual debt service would drop down.
I just want to make sure it was clear for those that weren't here, so.
Oh, that's fine.
All right.
So basically, I'll bring it back in December and hopefully we have a better understanding.
We'll know something from DEP at that time.
Hopefully,
Fingers
yes, sir.
That's the kicker.
Yes, it is. All right, moving on to agenda item number 15, the local purchase option. Mr. Hayford?
Again, we went through this yesterday. It was a request of local purchase. I can tell you that it basically centered around, from the review of this Attorney General's position by both staff and all of staff as to whether or not a independent special district like the OUA could in fact supersede state statutes that required certain procedures for the purchase of goods and services. And what it's centered around, you can read this article that was in there. This right here is the question that was asked by the Water Management District about granting a local preference to a business within the boundaries of the district. If you're so inclined and want to, there is a lot of legal issues in the middle of here, citing cases and understanding. I'm sure that end of the diocese read it lengthy, but what I come down to is the last statement here, this opinion. And you can read it, that it basically states, and Tom, you can correct me on this, but because the OUA does not have home rule authority that would allow us to supersede certain statutes, we have to abide by state statutes. So I can leave it to Tom to give us his legal opinion on this, but that's what we were centered on, that we don't have home rule authority, and therefore we can't modify state statutes. So like goods and services, construction projects, and engineering, there is the Competitive Consultant Negotiation Act out there that does state this is the policy for making awards, and here are the thresholds that requires to abide by the CCNA requirements, and so therefore we can't get around the statutes.
Well, they give us a definition of why the city and county can and we can't.
Right.
That was the part that we needed.
Counsel, you have anything for us?
This, the only thing I can tell you is that an attorney general opinion is not law. It's an indication of what the attorney general anticipates would happen if you took the action that you asked and they said, no, we don't think you can do it. And usually you don't go against an attorney general opinion. It's challengeable, but do we want to spend money to do that? And I would say no. We already see how much our financial demands are going to be, so no. We don't go out on a limb and challenge in view of the opinion of the Attorney General.
So that's where we left it with the workshop yesterday.
Well, it makes it easier for us to answer questions like Tabitha said yesterday. We can now explain why the county can do it, we can't.
Any further discussion? I think we discussed it in depth yesterday with a big fat no on it.
Well, that kind of give us our answer.
Yes.
Yep. Moving on to agenda item 16, building rehabilitation / property purchase. John?
Again, what was before, for the board was the idea of should, with this building, we went through the idea over the last few months about age limitations, age of the building. The question that was arised is should we put money into modifying this building or should we buy other buildings? We looked at the neighboring building. That didn't work out because of the price and the condition of that building. We looked at a building on the north side of town, nice, very nice building, good property, more than what we needed, cost a lot of money. We looked at a building to the south, down by the much-loved traffic circle, the center of attention for DOT and the county. We all love it and circles around it every night. And we looked at that building. Building is similar in size to this building. We did several walkthroughs. We got an appraisal. $707,000, I think, is what it came in at. The owner of the building, the asking price was much higher, like $960,000. But at some point in time during this process, it was determined that there were, for the reasons and the justification, there was a mention by a number of board members that said they would never be in favor of moving down south. So from a staff perspective, what we were just asking is that we could get direction from the board that that is where the board is heading, not to consider purchasing another property, so that it clears our direction up to start doing repairs on this building. The immediate repairs that we need to do is fix a leaking roof, and we need to clean up the outside, pressure wash, paint the outside of this building at a minimum. And so we were hoping that with the board discussion to get this out there, would we ever consider moving? And if not, that's great. Then we'll move forward with fixing this building. So that's kind of where we were hoping. The board discussion was a workshop, and I do believe, I think we put it down there that there is enough people that would be against purchasing the building and therefore take it off the table.
We kind of went with, what you said, and please repeat that, what you said before you left yesterday.
Well, my thought on it is that we stay the course. We don't spend money at least until some next year maybe, because we don't know what the economy's gonna do. And I just think we need to just back off and continue with what we're doing. And if we have to do repairs to the building, then we have to do repairs to this building. But I don't think any decision needs to be made until, like I said, maybe sometime next year. And we need to hold on to money.
I'll second that.
And we did talk about make sure that we got the roof fixed.
Yes, yes, we did.
At a minimum. The John and Jamie Roofing Company is
We're not
Too
licensed
busy.
to do work. Somebody's here, we're gonna listen to it,
too
so.
busy.
Focus on other picks.
So I don't know that a motion is needed, but clearly that's the board direction that we are not purchasing a building and do the necessary repairs to this building to return it.
Tom, do we need a motion for that?
Do you want authorization, does staff want authorization to pursue getting an engineer and estimates?
I'm gonna say, I don't necessarily, I mean, I'll certainly take it, but I can reach out to architects and engineers and first get a determination on this roof. Can it be fixed, or does it have to be replaced? And I need to get that kind of judgment from somebody that is in the business and can look at it.
Yesterday you mentioned having a roof inspector look at it, is that
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
think that's
more
wise.
so than M&H Roofing Company up there looking at it.
That's wise.
I'd like to see that in case you get audited, auditor purposes, that ought to be a board action authorizing.
I make a motion that John reach out and get a engineer, consultant,
Roofing inspection.
roofing
by
engineering,
qualified individual.
qualified roofing engineer to come in and look at our roof and give us direction on where we need to go.
Motion by Mr. Clay.
Second.
Second, Ms. Anderson. Further discussion? This is not to proceed, this is just to get information, correct?
Correct.
Any other discussion?
I do have one question. As far as annual maintenance of the building, what do we have in the way of an annual maintenance schedule? Because you mentioned cleaning, to me, that should be some sort of annual initiative anyway.
Well, we've always just kind of waited to see how deep the green got on the side of the building, unfortunately. But I hate to say that publicly, but.
I can try to get back to you on the, if there's a, in the budget, I don't recall. Normally, the way, there is a number in there for roofing, because roofing. The usual culprit is air conditioning.
Last time they did it, the bricks
That,
fell off.
that goes out. And they get worked on once a year, twice a year, where something doesn't, a thermostat goes out or, whatever, so
So
we do have that.
Do we have staff that's not able to clean the outside of the building? I mean, that's what we do at the bank. We have a staff member that actually.
I don't know, I'd have to check to see even if we do have a pressure washer.
Okay.
We could always rent one if we don't, but I don't know that answer. Typically, what we did the last time we did the build, it was just the painting contractor had the whole fix. They could get the lift truck for painting, they used the lift truck for pressure, and they just did the whole thing. And that way they could see the repairs that were necessary prior to painting, fix those.
Yeah, I would just like to see the annual maintenance schedule at some point, so.
That's why you get the big bucks. You can put it in your maintenance schedule or get out there with your pressure washer.
So,
Thank you, John.
That's
Okay.
all.
is there,
All right, we said we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion?
Chairman,
I was making sure they knew where.
I miss some things, but this one I'm not. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 17, 66-acre property sales. This was something also was discussed yesterday.
Another workshop item. The way it left at the last board meeting, there was a request made about a portion on the 66 acres, about 12 acres, was involved in a disposal pond from the water treatment plant. So a question was raised for us to look at moving that pond up to the property adjacent to the water treatment plant on the old Flores Street property. Again, the comment that came back with an estimated construction price for a new pond around $100,000 based on what we paid years earlier. And if it was $300,000, then that 12-acre parcel would need to have a listing or sales price of at least $5,000 to kind of wash out the cost of the construction versus the sale price. What that really means, though, net effect lost to the OUA is sales. So our net line is still down 300,000. It's not a cost, but we don't see the receipt of the sale of the property. After some discussion, there was direction that I go and get a better estimate on the construction from a local company that builds ponds to see if this 5 to 7 acre size pond is in fact can be constructed for $300,000, or due to inflation it's more than that, or just dirt moving it could be done less than that. But to get a better comfort level on where that pricing, so we'll reach out to some local contractors just to get estimates on that. And so because we're still waiting on that, the direction was we would just wait on any more discussions on the 66 acres as to what we want to do with it. I believe that's a recap of what the workshop developed.
Yes, it was a recommendation of the workshop, the board members at the workshop yesterday, to wait until we got a cost on the new pond before we made any decisions on this.
Why are we gonna go out and spend the money though? I mean, I would just leave the property where it is. Now, like you said, we don't know. There's an unknown over the next couple of months to a year over here. money on the property. The property value is very low right now. I don't think it's a good idea.
Well, right now, I think we're just looking at what it would cost to do it. We're not committing to spending any money. We're just getting an idea of what the options are, Steve.
And it gives your 66 acres more value than 46 acres with a 12-acre pond on it, or 44 acres with a 12-acre pond
It's
on it.
my understanding the call and to the local contractors isn't gonna cost us anything. They can just give us a ballpark of what it would cost. So we could just bring back some information that we could use a little bit more productively. Okay.
And refresh my memory, did we tap into a local realtor to get some opinions based on what we're talking about?
We did.
Okay.
The discussions were about the alignment. Is it all one parcel? Is it that north-south orientation? That be better? And so I say that their opinion on that issue was it wouldn't be worth it for the expense of moving the pond versus what it would gain raising the per acre sales price. Although in my mind, it looked like, that's why I'm not a realtor, by the way, it looked like it might have been more advantageous for the buyer to have that. And as far as the layout that we presented, as far as the split, was something that they kind of concurred that looked okay. They said that they knew of a buyer that would probably be very interested in it.
As is?
Yes, as is, but that's not a commitment to buy. What our real issue was, how do we sell the property, because it's, public funds that we're dealing with, and in the past, we had done auctions, but that's not to say that we can't list it with a realtor, so we'd have to go through the process of selecting a realtor to list it, and then let them bring us buyers.
When we got on, kind of, Harry and I kind of going back and forth on the right-of-ways. And that led into the pond. And then that led into, okay, let's check and see about moving the pond and selling the whole piece. So that's kind of how this thing morphed back to where it's at, because I have heartburn with giving somebody right-of-way across our property
Yeah, for liability reasons.
for liability reasons, straight up. So the way that they had it laid out, we would need to move the right-of-way to one side or the other and own it and not let them use it, or, you know what I'm saying? So that's how this thing's more where it's at. But he can make a few phone calls, we can let it lay till prices come back, we can, but this gives us an idea of containing everything on that vacant.
I think it would be proper. That information. Okay. So said. I think the motion would be in the content of contacting a company to give us a price on building a pond. 8-acre pond.
Okay.
So said.
Yeah.
And did you second that?
Okay, so who was,
Miss Anderson seconded that.
and who was,
Mr. Clay and Miss Anderson. We have subtitles here. Moving on to agenda item, you need something, John?
was there a vote?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All in favor? Yeah.
Aye.
Okay, we'll do it again. Sorry.
That's that shirt
I think I missed that.
squeezing the air out of it.
Agenda item 18, salary review. John, you still have the soapbox.
My goodness.
All right, so in the workshop yesterday, we went through lots of things on this salary review. One of the things we touched on to start off with, there is a required minimum wage increase over the next few years, all the way through to September 30th of 2026, where the state minimum wage is going to go up to $15, and it goes up in stepped increments every year to get to that $15. From the original starting point of $8.56, the first year was 10, and every year thereafter $1 was added till they got up to $15. So what has the OUA done over the time period? The, let's see.
He's doing that. I'm about a minute. Be right back. It's all yours. You're okay.
So we had this in your package here, looking at our OUA annual, the salary rate by job classification. And you can see that we looked at 2019 all the way up to 2023, how they have changed over time by each category. You can go through this, but the one point I'd like to point out is that here at the bottom, those years, let's do it this way. So we can try, I'm trying to do this, if it works. So for the year in 2019, the OUA minimum, the lowest salary that we offered was $11.85. In 2020, it was $11.97. The state average lowest was $8.56. What I want to point out is the delta between the state average minimum and ours was $3.41. And every year thereafter, when the increment started here in 2022, the state was up to $10. Our minimum was $13.44. We tried to maintain that delta between the state average and ours at $3.44. So that's what our task was, trying to go through with the board rolling in the dollar an hour. This year, it kept that delta at $3.44 for the minimum. I can tell you my recollection, we might have one, or we may have one like new hire at that, but I don't think I looked over that we had anybody at that minimum. They were all somewhere above that, $14.44 in the $15 an hour range. But I still looked at the lowest available price per hour on the chart versus the state, and that was my watershed deal at $3.44. So this part over here shows the different OUA actions, either towards, I don't know what I'm doing now, between COLAs, merit increases, or bonuses. And then in later years, like in FY '22, we started the across-the-board salary adjustments for every person, every category. First year was $1.35. This year, it's $1. And clearly, as a OUA perspective, to keep up with the state mandated minimum, if we want to keep that delta at $3.40, would require $1 per year through 2026.
Go ahead.
Is there a question?
No, what we had talked about yesterday was we've already funded the dollar for $154,000. Second one. And we can take that out of the $635,000 surplus we have every year for carryover. And that's what we were looking at yesterday was above the $15 threshold and give some of these people well-deserved raises. We got people here for 21 years making a little over $20, you know, and so we were looking at, we funded one, we can fund the second dollar without harming ourselves, without raising our rates to our people and or to our consumers, and it still doesn't get us anywhere near what's going on in the community. Gary Ritter was here yesterday and said, I think they're at 15, 20. Is that what he said? Is their beginning? All the people that I've talked to, and it was mostly construction people. The guy that's walking around scraping the floors after doing cleanup, he's 15. The guy standing on the ground handing stuff to the guy on the ladder, he's 15, but everybody else is 17, 18, all the way. Tobacco in the parking lot was 30, 50. Mechanic over here, top guys 20, guy or low guys 38, 50. So kind of brought all that to the table, and then we batted it. We believe we would be good to go on how to do this without harming us, but also to try to get something started and then go ahead and start focusing on how are we going to keep it going. Yeah, one comment I made yesterday is you take 5 people, and me and Jamie went back and forth about this. You take John Hayford, Jamie Gamagati, Jess Manson out of the equation, and what do we have? We have chaos. So we've got to figure out how to get people to stay. And we all know, we beat this to death yesterday again about they'll tell you right quick, they can't eat insurance or benefits right now. That 25-year-old, he could care less. We still have to pay for them. We got to figure out, and again, I think that the $2 with one we've already budgeted, we can afford the next one, I think is a minimum that.
Wrong, but as a result of our yesterday, with the funding mechanism was in place for sure. But we came out of there with 3 options that we needed to make a decision on what to do today.
Yes.
Whether, you want to go over that, or John, or you want me? Okay, go ahead. I can do it, or you can do it.
So the flip side of that, adding the dollar, that is the benefit, we're gonna have to do it anyway. Because we're gonna keep up with the state minimum wage. We have to do it anyway. So what's the issue if we bring it forward a year early? I'm gonna have to fund it next year anyway. We've gotta do $1 a year. So it's easily something you can look at and justify. And so we accelerate a year. Yeah, okay, it's gonna, depending on whether you make it retroactive, I'm reminding you, I'm supposed to say that.
Yes.
To October 1st, or whether you implement it right now, the worst case scenario, it's $156,000 a year. And we're saying, well, that's multiplied labor rate. Have to consider the cost of the pension, the Social Security insurance. That $1 a year times the 50 some odd employees at the time, it's going to be $156,000 multiplied. What I actually see as a cost on my budget. That Larston sees on his budget.
This year,
He's responsible.
One cost